All right, welcome to another episode of the NFL Outdated Cover 2 series, the Super Bowl preview, Philadelphia Eagles with, I was going to say the guys from Philly, but it's Chris from Philly podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Doing well. And as we get started, where can everyone find you everywhere on socials and everything?
TikTok at the Philly podcast. Obviously, CEV Sports is our Twitter handle. And just CEV Sports and the Philly podcast on Facebook. We kept it simple. We didn't go too crazy.
I think simple is probably the best. You try to go anything, crazy. It's hard to remember. You want to, something simple. And Philly, that is something that everybody remembers too. And is that, obviously you've been doing the podcast for quite a while then?
So we started doing the podcast in 2019. More of like, to like let out. We started doing it in 2019 after Wentz got hurt the second time. And then, we started doing it. We did that, and then it was right after we went live when Alshon Jeffrey dropped the ball against New Orleans, and then we just rolled from it there. And then we used to do it in my basement, as you can see. Me and my buddy Eric, who's actually unfortunately he's not here. He's shopping for wedding venues. God bless him. But then COVID hit, and then we didn't do it for a couple of weeks, and then it was like, all right. So then another buddy of mine, John, who does Driveway Athletes, he started doing it, but he was doing it through Anchor. So then we started doing it through Anchor. Then we latched on with Philly Sports Alliance, and and then we started doing it through StreamYard. And then, Six Pack Coverage, who was one of our sponsors, reached out to us and said, hey, you want to come with us, be the official podcast for Six Pack Coverage for the Philadelphia Eagles? Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Why would I not? If you go on and check out, Six Pack Coverage, if you go to the bios, obviously, like we said earlier backstage, Albert Hainsworth is one of the founders, but they put in everyone's bio. And one of my bios is, I joke around. I call myself the voice of Philadelphia, the voice of the voiceless, like CM Punk, because listen, the Philadelphia fan base, they get a bad rap. That's deservedly so. They deservedly they deserve it, but it's not everyone. And I will defend our fan base, but I will also rip our fan base. Like it's as long as it's deserving and they're not acting like a fool. I'll call them out on it. Don't act a fool. I feel like that's the easiest thing to do.
I tell you what, I think every fan base has, that crazy kind of in them, And I'm a Bear fan. We talked about that. Obviously, there are some Bear fans that kind of get a bad rap, but I see it in Packer fans as well, and just kind of things like that. We won't really get into that, but I definitely appreciate you sharing your path to with your podcast. Now I want to talk a little bit about the Eagles' path to the Super Bowl, because we talked a little bit offline. I went ahead and did the bold prediction last year before the draft, before they get A.J. Brown. I said that Jalen Hurts would be in the MVP conversation. And at that point, you were the exact opposite. So talk about that and just kind of that transformation, and then some other key offseason moves from 2022 that helped them to get to this point.
Okay, so anybody who knows me personally knows I was a big Carson Wentz guy. Love the guy. Maybe it's because we both have red hair. I don't know. I don't know what it was. But, in 2020, you're sitting down. I'm on like a FaceTime with like four of my best friends that we talk football with. And we're watching the Eagles select Jalen Reagor. Just still blew my mind. I'm like, all right, whatever. Then second round comes the next night, and they draft Jalen Hurts. In my mind, I'm going, we needed weapons. Carson Wentz needed weapons, and they got him a punt returner and a backup quarterback. And, I'm always like, if your guy's not there in the second round, draft an offensive lineman. That's what Andy Reid did. That's what Doug Peterson did. I don't know why Doug went away from it, but I'm like, you go for the best player at the trench position, which is either defensive line or offensive line. 2020 rolls around. We all know that debacle it was. He gets benched with 4 games left in the season. Jalen Hurts runs all over the Saints in his first start. Absolutely obliterates the Saints, who at the time had the #1 rushing defense, and he just embarrassed them. Come the next 3 games, he goes back to looking pedestrian. Wasn't so good. 2021 comes, they trade Carson Wentz for a first-round pick. I don't know how he did it. God bless Howie Roseman. I'll say if he doesn't win Executive of the Year, I don't know why they have an award. I'll go back to I've ripped on Howie. So we go 2021. Eagles start out 2-5. A little bit of rough break start. They beat Atlanta in the season opener. We're thinking, we're there. Like Jalen Hurts is the guy. Comes down to earth. Then Nick Sirianni, makes adjustments. And they end up finishing 7-2, like or 8-2. Cool, 9-8. Make the playoffs, get destroyed by Tampa Bay. We go back, me and Eric, we looked at the game film. One of the plays, he missed Quez Watkins on a deep route. Okay. I'm like, this guy can't read defense. Like, he just can't. Like, is this the guy? So, we're, me and Eric, like, this, I don't think he's the guy. And we went into the draft. We did a live show. We're like thinking that they're going to draft Kenny Pickett. They're going to draft Malik Willis. Like, this is happening. Like, whether we like it or not, this is happening. We all know what happens. They trade for A.J. Brown. And my live reaction was almost to that of Jason Kelsey's. Like, I was in Chicago for work, and I'm sitting in my hotel room, and I first off, I fell out of my seat. Then I got back up, and I'm like, don't play with my emotions, Eagles. And then, they traded a first and a third for A.J. Brown. So I'm like, maybe, because you got to remember, Tyreek Hill had gotten traded, like all those moves, like everything just went into effect. I'm like, no one gets traded. Again, me, wrong again. I'm like, no one gets traded on draft night. Players, I think 2 players got traded that night. Like what? Was I wrong? Like, no wonder I'm doing this in my basement. So, but then we go into the 2022 season, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, for me, they play 17 games. For Jalen Hurts to be successful, he's got to throw 34 touchdowns. That's 2 touchdowns a game. Even throw 30 touchdowns. That's I think it was like 1.25 touchdowns a games. Yeah, that's doable. It's a passing league. This is my apology to Jalen Hurts. Again, I've done it multiple times. I've been called out on social media. I have my favorite team's playing in a Super Bowl. I have no problem eating crow and admitting I was wrong. I've done it on multiple outlets. He went out. He threw 22 touchdowns. He ran for 13. He had a total of 35 touchdowns. He finished second in the MVP rating in the MVP race. If he doesn't get hurt, it's probably a lot closer than the 48 votes that Patrick Mahomes got. Let's be realistic. Patrick Mahomes deserved the MVP. I mean,
absolutely.
Anybody, listen, Philadelphia. Anybody who thinks otherwise, like we know what Patrick Mahomes is. We have a good one coming up who's about to get paid. We have a good quarterback who's about to get paid. And you saw one thing that I saw from Hurts that I never saw in Wentz, but I saw in like Nick Foles was just the leadership. Like, he was the voice, and he wasn't loud. He wasn't screaming at people. He just said, listen, we're going to go. Like, I don't know if you watched the NFC Championship game. I watched every Philadelphia Eagles game. You see Jalen Hurts smile once a little bit. He smiled at the end of the NFC Championship game. Like, he was smiling. He did a terrible rendition of the Philadelphia Eagles fight song, but he was smiling. And it was nice to see that kid smile because, like you said, he's been through a lot. Like, he's as a player, like, went to Alabama, got benched, came back in, won the national championship game. Went to Oklahoma, played with CeeDee Lamb, finished second in the Heisman race. Like, I'm an Alabama guy. I liked them in Alabama. I wasn't too much of a Tua guy. I liked them. I didn't think I was okay because you got to remember, Jalen Hurts was a projected 4th round pick, and he was projected to go to the Dallas Cowboys in the 4th round. So, like, that was, it was there was a lot of questions about that pick. So again, we go into 2022. Eagles start out 8-0. We all know the narrative. Who do the Eagles play? You play who's on your schedule. I'm sorry.
Well, I just want to kind of go back a little bit. Obviously, a lot of things you're talking about with Hertz, from when he started, is can he throw? Can he? And all those narratives about leadership and all those things. It to me, the reason I had I liked Hertz, I kind of made that prediction is because I saw someone who was even keel. He wasn't all emotional up and down. At least he didn't show that, even when he was struggling. And I think that was important. But yeah, I mean, you go from you looked at his numbers at Alabama and Oklahoma, and you saw growth and accuracy. And I think it was just some of the things that he had worked on mechanics wise, and you kind of see that progression. And it's interesting with young quarterbacks, especially with like you talk about like Jalen. Talk about Justin Fields now. The national narrative is he can't throw, he can't do this, can't do that. He's a young quarterback, and I think it's important that you let these quarterbacks continue to learn the game. And yes, there's going to be losses, and it's important that you have this surrounding cast as well. But it takes time in the NFL to learn how to win, and it's important when you have that surrounding cast. Now, Justin Fields, he didn't have that surrounding cast. Hopefully, they'll start to kind of build, and you can kind of see that. But it's interesting, like we kind of look at a play here, and we're like, oh, he can't throw, and we do that all the time, and we don't know kind of in the building what's happening. But for me, similar to what you talk about with Jalen Hurts, I saw with Justin Fields at the end of the season, his leadership with Chase Claypool. That's kind of what I wanted to see. He was on the sideline, and he was calming Chase Claypool down, saying, "Hey, let's not freak out." And when you see that progression and you add those pieces, I mean, that's obviously the recipe. What the Bears want to do is what the Eagles have been doing.
Yeah, and you're right with Justin Fields. Like, you have to be patient with these guys. And I know it's been a while since the Bears. And listen, I've been there. I've been there as an Eagles fan. Like, it's you want everything done right away. You got to look back at the Eagles. They won the Super Bowl in 2017. They were a train wreck in 2020, and now they're in the Super Bowl in 2022. That doesn't happen in the NFL without great leaders from top to bottom. Like, the new narrative is that the Eagles haven't played anyone, and that the easiest job in the NFL is being quarterback for the NFL Eagles by Chris Sims. Is it his fault that Howie Roseman drafted legitimately an All-Pro Pro Bowl line? He's got good coaches. Coach Jeff Stoutland is a master at the offensive lineman. And I don't know what he does, but he made Jordan Mailata, who was a 7th-round pick who played rugby, an All-Pro left tackle. Like, I don't like, and we're sitting there. Dallas Goedert, he drafted him in the 2nd round. He's a top 5 tight end. Obviously, AJ Brown and Devontae Smith. Like you rip GMs for not putting good teams together, but when they do, it's the complete opposite. Like Dallas puts together a great draft every year.
Every year, yep.
They just don't have good coaching to get them over the hump. Like,
I agree.
If they had, and that's what I sit there and I said the Eagles always had this season, at least this season, over Dallas, is they had good coaching. Second game that they played Dallas, they didn't have Jalen Hurts and Gardner Minshew turn the ball. We turned the ball over 4 times, and we dropped, and they dropped 40 points on us. You don't when you turn the ball over 4 times, you're going to give up a lot of points. It's just how the NFL works. It's unless it's a really bad team like the Indianapolis Colts or whoever, like, you can't turn the ball over 4 times to, let alone a division rival.
Yeah. You talked about coaching, and I love that video of Nick Sirianni going down the sideline and saying, "I know what the F I'm doing."
Yeah, he does.
Listen, and it's fun. Yeah.
Like, I don't know if you've ever heard, he did a video. He talked about watering a plant and the growth. So when we get off, you got to Google Nick Sirianni.
Oh, was that his opening press conference?
No, that was a debacle. People wanted him fired. People wanted him fired an hour later. I blamed the Eagles. I blame the Eagles, the PR team, for not getting him ready for that, because that was a debacle. But he had made They had just finished two. They just lost their fifth game, and he had made a statement about, we're a plant. Like, you water us, and we'll eventually grow, and we'll succeed. And everyone was like, "What is this guy talking about?" And since he's made that speech, he's 24-6. He's 24-6, and he's got his team in the Super Bowl. Can we stop questioning these coaches on their ability and what they say? I don't care what he says anymore. Like, he's got my vote. I'm okay with Nick Sirianni. He's cool with me.
Yeah, that's the thing, and kind of parallel. I always think of like the Bears coach, and I'm not sure, what he's going to be, Eberflus yet, right? But he talked about the hit principle and all these kind of like cheesy principles and everything. And but really, when you look at organizations, I mean, it's not just that. It's all the coaches that they put in place, and I like what the Bears have done with Luke Getsy and all of that. And when you look at the Eagles, as far as the offensive staff, I mean, do they have they've got a solid offensive staff kind of to really help Jalen and help that offense, don't they?
Yeah, they got Shane Steichen. For the first time in his career, he's had back-to-back same playing offensive coordinator. I don't think people realize how huge that is. Like, if you go back and look at Jared Goff. Like, in the beginning of his career, he had 3 straight seasons of bad offensive coordinators. Look at Daniel Jones. He had bad offensive coordinators. It gets, once you get the play calling down and it doesn't change, you're going to succeed in the NFL. If you have the talent, you're going to succeed in the NFL. I mean, look at Patrick Mahomes. He's had Eric Bieniemy for 5 seasons.
Well, that's exactly. And it's interesting when you look at quarterbacks, and you look at, obviously when you look at the Super Bowl, Jalen Hurts, Mahomes, those are important players. What are I wanted to talk about some of the key players like outside of the norm, that maybe are the key for hopefully your Eagles or maybe even the Chiefs winning on Sunday.
All right. So for the Chiefs to have a chance, I wouldn't put a backup tight end on the edge to block Hassan Reddick. Let's go with that, number one.
Yeah.
Stop. Hassan Reddick, the fact that he wasn't a finalist for Defensive Player of the Year, it's highway robbery. And anyone who doesn't think so, again, in my opinion, you don't know football. The guy had 5 forced fumbles, 16 and a half sacks, 37 tackles, and I think 17 of them were solo tackles. He had 16 and a half sacks. He had 2.5 in the playoffs. He was all over the field. He created the fumble on the first series. Unfortunately, he knocked out Brock Purdy. It's part of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, injuries are part of the game. So, for me, it's going to come down to, who's going to be the extra lineman or player that is going to block Hassan Reddick, because the front 4, they're going to get to the quarterback. The Eagles had 5 players or 4 players with 10 sacks. They had the most sacks since your 85 Bears.
Mm-hmm.
So they have the best defensive line in football. Obviously, we got to make sure that we keep Jalen Hurts, clean. Chris Jones is a beast. Frank Clark is a beast. They have Anthony Hitchens, who's a pretty good linebacker. It comes down to that. Again, it's going to come down to the trenches, and if they get to Patrick Mahomes, which I think they will, I don't think it's going to be that close of a game. And by close of a game, I mean like a 10-point win.
Mm-hmm.
If they get to him. Andy could come up with something. He could have a chip. But the Eagles, another thing, a scary player that scares me for the Chiefs is McKinnon. That guy is a pass-catching machine out of the backfield. Like, he really is.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then for the Eagles on the other side, I think who's might be up there is Kenneth Gainwell.
Mm-hmm.
Kenneth Gainwell leads the NFL in rushing in the playoffs. Like, if you go back and watch the game film of him, when he comes out of the backfield, he's always open. I don't get it. Stick that he's a third down running back. And he's fast, just like Boston Scott. Boston Scott is fast and strong. If you get him on an outside, on an inside cut wedge, he's going to outrun your lineman. It's just the way it is. And Miles Sanders is just his vision. He just waits for plays to develop. It's sometimes it reminds me, and I'm not comparing him to him, so anybody watching, it reminds me of LaDainian Tomlinson. How LaDainian Tomlinson would just sit, wait, and then go. He's not there yet, but that's what his running style is.
I say, yeah, Miles Sanders, he's kind of, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what he's been within the Philadelphia fan base, but I mean, I don't know if everyone's really a fan of him. Miles Sanders, I mean, he's been up and down. He's been hurt, hasn't he?
Yeah. So Miles Sanders had some fumbling issues, and then he was hurt, and then was like, we know he had the talent. I don't know if he's going to be an Eagle next year. I have a sneaky feeling the Eagles may go in on Josh Jacobs. I don't know why.
Oh,
I don't know why.
Well, that's what I was gonna ask though, because when you look at that, it's almost similar to the DeMarco Murray stuff, isn't it? Like, when you look at DeMarco Murray, they the Cowboys kind of rode him, and I feel like the Raiders just rode Josh Jacobs.
This season he did. I think he had almost 600 touches.
And so they talked about, Jacobs got, the DeMarco Murray, package basically. And so like, if the Eagles were to sign him, that almost would be a repeat of what they had done previous with DeMarco Murray. When you look at it, does Gainwell though have the potential to be a bell cow back at all, or?
He may. He seems a little too small for me.
Mm-hmm.
But he's still on a rookie deal. Boston Scott's on a 1-year deal, and Miles Sanders is set to become a free agent. So that's if they're going to make a play, unless they're confident with going in Kenneth Gainwell and then drafting a running back, they very well could.
There's some decent running backs in the draft. You look at it, but would you be okay with them going all in on Josh Jacobs?
As long as it doesn't cost the bank, because you still have to pay Jalen Hurts.
Mm-hmm.
And Howie Roseman manipulates his cap, and I don't know how he does it, but he does it.
Because with the Bears, we have a similar situation with Montgomery, and he's great talent, but I just don't know in the NFL if it's a premium position to put all that money in one spot. Now the Bears have a ton of money, so they could maybe even go for Saquon. We'll see what the Bears do, but that running back position, I mean. It seems like a lot of teams have these multiple players, in and out, and maybe not the bell cow back. I mean, you look at the Chiefs. I mean, they've relied on their first round pick has been nowhere, right? And now they got Jerick McKinnon, kind of off the bench. So when you look at some of these teams, it almost seems like the running back isn't as important as in the past.
No, it isn't. It's a copycat league.
Mm-hmm.
I fully expect in 2 years you're going to see a lot of RPOs.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the way the league is. Another reason that I think Josh Jacobs might be a good signing here is because the Eagles run a lot of RPOs. And he wouldn't be taking those hits that he takes from the linebackers. The inside the trenches. Again, Jalen Hurts takes off. And he's getting smarter, and he knows when to run with the ball. It's not like the Michael Vicks of the early 2000s where it was if the play wasn't there, he runs. No, I think if Michael Vick at the end, towards when he came to Philadelphia in 2010, and if he played in today's era of football, he would you couldn't stop him. He is the arm and the speed. But with Josh Jacobs and all that, I think they overused Josh Jacobs in Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
You had Devontae Adams.
Yeah.
You had the weapons. I don't understand. That guy should not be touching the ball 45 times, almost 40 times a game. It felt like that. I think they just overused them, but I think there's something there that I think the Eagles there were not grumblings, but there was reports earlier in the season that the Eagles may have had some interest for Josh Jacobs, but there was nothing there. It was just and it was just hearsay. How Twitter is.
Mm-hmm.
How all the bleeding green nations and everything else. How they just throw stuff out there to try to get someone the hook and reel, and then you sit there and you actually look all right, well maybe this would be a good signing. it would be a guy who could take the ball 25, 30 times a game. Because Josh Jacobs is a big guy, and he's fast.
Mm-hmm.
He can create his own. He creates his own hole. And when you go back to the game earlier in the season against Seattle, he had the walk-off 80-yard touchdown in overtime.
That's crazy. That actually beat me in a fantasy football league. That was
that won me $200 on my parlay, on my late game parlay. So I'll call Josh Jacobs. You're good with me. But, I wouldn't mind seeing Miles Sanders back, but the Eagles have a lot of off-season decisions to make.
Well, and that's the thing. You kind of look at it. Obviously, all the different moves that a team makes to get to Super Bowl. I mean, the Rams, they were all in and they won the Super Bowl. So what are some other pieces? I mean, they've really done. Howie Roseman's really done some late season moves as well that have kind of on that defensive line that's kind of helped, right?
There's a lot of things the Eagles did. Obviously trading for AJ Brown, number one.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was, to me, that was the biggest move that was made. You got that number one wide receiver. You have the number one complement to Devontae Smith. You have the complement to Dallas Goedert. You have a legitimate number one. Number two was drafting Jordan Davis, who was, was told, hey, he's this, he's that. His workout regimen is this, is that. But it's not like he came from Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
And Georgia doesn't, kind of like Alabama, they don't just recruit schlub players.
Mm-hmm.
So you have that. They took a chance on Nakobe Dean.
I was going to say, when you were talking about that, it kind of reminded me of a former Eagle player that was drafted. He had a fantastic combine and up draft boards and ended up in Philly. See if you can think of his last name. Starts with an M. Muma.
No. What?
Was it Chad Muma, or is that it's out of Boston College a few years ago? I'm a little bit older here, but he went off draft boards out of Boston College, and I think sometimes you get
Mike Mamula.
Mike Mamula. There you go. I knew it was one of those. You know what I mean? So
he was only good against the Giants.
You have these players. I think, and I think it's less now with all the technology and stuff. But when you look at some of these programs, I mean that's you see how they develop players in Alabama. Now Georgia's becoming that. I mean, I think the one thing I would worry about with some of the players is, do they get kind of masked by other great players, right? And when I look at, a player that maybe needed that from the Bears, you got had a big trade in the midseason that got my guy Robert Quinn. So I think he kind of needed that, and he's really only been like a second or third stringer with you guys, right?
Yeah, he hasn't really had much of an impact, which is fine. He's there to give the guys rest. He's like and that's perfectly fine. Like this is what these guys do. Like they rotate in and out. As long as you get pressure on the quarterback. I mean, the first 18 plays of the NFC Championship game, the Eagles had 15 quarterback pressures. So, like, think about that. Like, so when while Robert Quinn's stats don't show up, him coming in and being able to get pressure on the quarterback and giving the Fletcher Coxes and the Brandon Grahams and the Hargraves rest, that's huge.
It is, and it's football is so different than other sports, like baseball or the NBA. The NBA, you need those top end starters, and obviously you need some bench players. But the NFL, you need these bench players. With how physical the game is, and you talked about in the trenches being important. I mean, that's huge when you want to get to a Super Bowl. I mean, those are the teams that are going to be successful that are good on either side of the ball in the trenches.
Correct, and like I said, when the Eagles went out and they took Jordan Davis. You go back and look at his college highlights. He would get double teamed, but he would still get pressure to the quarterback. But his double team led to Nakobe Dean running up the middle untouched. So I clamored, and my co-host Eric, we wanted Nakobe Dean. I'm like, you have them 2 picks, draft them. I was okay with them trading the pick for AJ Brown, made for cool. And then they even drafted Nakobe Dean in the 3rd round. Made it so much better. Nakobe Dean has been a stud on special teams. He's been huge on special teams. When he came in a couple weeks ago, TJ Edwards got hurt. He led the team in tackles for a quarter. The Eagles defense is going to be, it's going to be good. But before we go back to the offseason moves, you had mentioned how the Rams went all in. And I don't know, did you see Jerry Jones's comments about the Rams and the Eagles?
Yeah, I take anything Jerry Jones has with a grain of salt. I mean, I
don't think he understands that the Eagles have 2 first-round picks and one's the 10th pick of the draft. It's not that we went all in. Howie just made the right moves. James Bradbury was a phenomenal signing. You traded a 7th-round pick for C.J. Gardner-Johnson to the Saints. That's why I was alluding back to the moves that the Eagles made in the offseason. You solidified your 2 corner spots. Avonte Maddox is great in the slot, and now you have C.J. Gardner-Johnson at the top. I don't know what else you want. I don't know what Jerry Jones was talking about.
I think they're, especially Jerry Jones, right? I think he likes to hear himself talk, right? And we talked about earlier, they have all this talent, but it's putting the right talent there, the right talent in the right places. And I always go back to this with, look at the Super Bowl, right? I mean, the quarterback is the most important position. I mean, you have to have that right. But that right player is not always evident right away. I mean, we look at Jalen Hurts. I mean, he was not a 1st-round pick. He was not, okay, he's going to come in. He was the number 1 pick. Mahomes wasn't either, right? And so you kind of look at these quarterbacks, just the right player with the right coaches and just kind of be able to see that kind of progression and all that. I mean, I think that's what you want to see. And when you look at Jerry Jones, he's had a lot of success, right? But not when it matters, and I think that's, he just can't get out of his own way. And I think that's, I mean, I'm old enough to remember when the Cowboys were in the Super Bowl, but not many people are right now.
Right. And that's the thing. You talk about a couple things. You talk about the 2 quarterbacks. Chiefs had Alex Smith when they drafted Patrick Mahomes. Eagles had Carson Wentz when they drafted Jalen Hurts. And if you go back and look at it, they were 2 good quarterbacks. But to be great and get to the Super Bowl, you need great quarterbacks. And I think that's and they're playing. Obviously, we don't know what Mahomes has done in 5 years. And, we don't know what Hurts' future holds for us. But it's looking like it's going to be a great future for us. And, I just can't question the moves that the Eagles make anymore. A big thing that the Eagles did in the offseason is they didn't go after Russell Wilson.
I'm glad the Bears didn't either.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, all right, I'm like, all right, if it costs you 2, I was like, if it costs you a first, because you got to remember, we had 2 first-round picks. I'm like, if it costs us 1 this year and maybe 1 next year, go for it. Kick the tires. He's a proven winner, and he was an absolute train wreck. So I'm glad that didn't happen. I never wanted Deshaun Watson. People kick the tires on that. Never wanted that guy. So I think those are 2 huge moves that they didn't make. So, re-signing Fletcher Cox after cutting him. That was, I don't know if anyone saw. I think he was due $18 million. He got cut on a Friday and he re-signed on a Monday for $14 million. And for me, I don't know. I could be speaking for all of Philadelphia. The biggest thing is Jason Kelce didn't retire.
Huge.
So I got to ask, as an outside fan, what are your thoughts on Jason Kelce?
Oh, I love Jason Kelce. Okay. And I think I love the personality. But as a Bears fan who had a terrible offensive line. I mean, they tried to patchwork it. I mean, some young players, maybe they got one or two young players that going into next year, but that is one of, I mean, the most important thing, obviously, for growth of a team. And I think that's why when I look at the Super Bowl, that's why I think the Eagles are going to win. I mean, I was a one that I predicted Jalen Hurts would be in the MVP conversation. Good prediction. Bad prediction. I predicted that the Chiefs were actually going to be last in their division, because
the writing was on the wall.
It was because of the wide receivers and all of that, and you just kind of like, what are they doing? They're taking a step back, right? But Mahomes is Mahomes, and if he was up against any other team right now, I would pick. It'd be hard to go against Mahomes. I mean, so that's why I think it might be a little bit closer because of his talent. I think Patrick Mahomes is getting in that GOAT conversation. Like, he can just will his team to win, regardless of how hurt he is, right? I mean, and that's something I would be scared about if I was an Eagles fan. But when you look at just top to bottom the team, the most important offensive line, Jason Kelsey, that leadership also is super important. I think that's huge, and so that's why it's hard to kind of go against the Eagles. I mean, you probably remember a number of years ago. I don't know, it was the Michael Vick years or whatever, where I can remember who it was. There was a free agent that said, "Oh, we've got a super team" or something like that for the Eagles.
It was a dream team comment, and it was Vince Young.
Ugh. Vince. Okay. Yes. Oh yeah. Vince Young. And when you look at it, I mean, quietly, you look at, I mean, you talked about all these pieces that Howie Roseman has put together. The Eagles are a solid team. They are the better overall team. They don't have the best player all around, but they are the best overall team altogether. And really, I think that starts with Jason Kelsey. And I think when you have some of your best players at those trench positions, that's huge. I mean, that's when you look at some of the teams around the league. I mean, some of the league teams have been competitive because of their offensive and defensive lines. I mean, Jacksonville, right? I think that's why they even, stayed competitive. I'm not a huge Trevor Lawrence fan. Everyone's like, oh, he's amazing. And he's been all right the last half of the season. But I think you look at that defensive line, defense and offensive line. I think those important parts. And you look at the Eagles, that they just have all of that. And that to me seems like a Super Bowl winner all around.
Yeah, like if you go back and like you look like, and I could be being biased. Like, I can't name any other centers in the league, but people know who Jason Kelsey is.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because of his leadership and his his characteristics. Like, who he is. I don't know who I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know who the Chiefs center is off the top of my head.
Yeah. They had one. Who's that young player they got? I can't think of his last name now.
I mean, I know, like, we all know who Alex Mack was. He was a great center, played with a broken ankle. Like,
right.
Like, we know, like, we and to be realistic, like, as football fans, you really shouldn't know who that best center in football is. It's not really a topic of conversation brought up, but here we are, and it's. We just talked about Alex Mack. We know who he is. We talked about Jason Kelsey. Everyone knows who Kelsey is. I mean, a lot of it is right now because of his brother and him playing in the Super Bowl and his mom, which is just the coolest thing ever. And it's one of these things, like, I don't even hate the Chiefs. It's like when you played the Patriots, you hated them because they won so much. And the Chiefs have won a lot. I mean, they haven't won Super Bowls, but they've been there. They've been to the AFC Championship game five years in a row. And you're just like, but there's nothing about the Chiefs that I dislike. I was not, if I'm this year, I was not a fan of Tyreek Hill for his past, but that's given a point. But there's, like, and it's hard for me not to hate anybody on this team unless they beat the Eagles. Then it's another season.
So the center for the Chiefs, and it was the guy I was thinking of, is Creed Humphrey.
Okay.
Young player, great player. So I want to talk a little bit about that then. You're facing Andy Reid. I mean, he is one of the most likable coaches in the NFL. Yeah, obviously you have Patrick Mahomes. That's important. What is it like? Has it been kind of leading up, maybe on Eagles Twitter? The fan base with facing Reed. What are some thoughts that people are expressing?
He's just a former coach of the Eagles who brought Eagles back from the dead. We got our Super Bowl. He's got his. For me, there's no animosity. It's just we're facing another coach like Andy Reid. He's been gone since 2013, 2012. I'm sorry, it's been 10 years. It's not. The only thing is he's 3-0 against the Eagles. So there's no animosity. I was happy when he won in 2019. I know there are a lot of Eagles fans were not a fan of Andy Reid, but they're over. We got our Super Bowl.
Why?
We got our Super Bowl before him.
Mm-hmm. Is that kind of why? So why people weren't a fan of him? Was it? Because he couldn't get over the hump.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because this is what could do the Chiefs in. Andy Reid is a great game planner all week. It's his in-game adjustments and his time clock management that turns out that can bite him in the butt. It's stuff like that could, eventually hurt him in the long run in the Super Bowl.
And it's interesting because you have great players. They can mask or make up for some of that. And obviously, Mahomes and Tyreek Hill did that last year, in previous years. And maybe Mahomes has been making up for that. That's an interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Listen, it's Andy Reid right now. He's got the X factor in Patrick Mahomes. We're not going to sugarcoat it. The Eagles are going to have a hard time with Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce. That is their Eagles' two biggest weaknesses. But 11 players versus those two, I'll deal with a +9 differential in players. Eagles they let up the least amount of yards after catch, and that's the key to holding Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes.
Mm-hmm.
Is he's still hurt? Like high ankle sprains. He's still gingerly. He's going to be wrapped up, but he's not. I don't think he'll be as mobile as people think he's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And if he takes one hit, you can re-aggravate that injury. And then, I thought Patrick Mahomes broke his ankle. I'm sorry. I thought he broke his ankle on that play.
Mm-hmm.
Me and my wife were watching. I'm like, that's broken. That's a Donovan McNabb break in the early 2000s against the Arizona Cardinals. I was like, that is broke. And high ankle sprain. I don't know, man. That's a tough injury to come back from. And that man came back and willed his team to win. Big reason that the Chiefs won that game against Jacksonville was Chad Henne took them on a 98-yard drive.
Mm-hmm.
You hold them right there, you probably win the game. But you let Chad Henne drive 98 yards. But yeah, Patrick Mahomes, he's Patrick Mahomes. No one's sitting there, to my knowledge, in Philadelphia and is saying that Patrick Mahomes is. So I will say this: I did see on Twitter after Chad Henne led them on that 98-yard drive that Patrick Mahomes is a system quarterback. Just shut up!
Anybody has a voice now. That's ridiculous. Yeah,
but at the end of the game, doesn't. But at the end of the day, isn't every quarterback a system quarterback that works for them? Stop it. I sit there and I'm like, it's just comical. And I'm like, I just get mad. You have Chris Sims saying anybody could play quarterback for the Eagles. Clearly Gardner Minshew couldn't. He went 0-2 and looked terrible.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I just think Chris Sims wants sound bites.
Oh, absolutely.
I've come to the conclusion that he just wants sound bites.
Yeah, that's what I think I've learned doing podcasting. I think anybody can have a voice. And when you look at it, it really doesn't. Chad Henne is he's a veteran, and that's what he's supposed to do, and just kind of come in and so if they've already got a game plan and really kind of do what the coaches say. But in big plays, the only reason the Chiefs have a Super Bowl win is because of Mahomes and Tyreek Hill. That play, keeping that game alive against the 49ers, right?
That was such bad defense.
Right. And so, but a lot of that, when things break down, what does a quarterback do? And it's interesting when you have both of these quarterbacks that, can make things happen with their legs or make things happen when things break down. And so I wanted to get to then your prediction. So I have talked to a Chiefs podcaster that gave me her prediction. What are your thoughts on the score?
So I hate predictions. It's and I know we do it. So this is how I look at it. I think the game is going to be one of two things. I think it's going to be a 31-24 win for the Eagles. But I also wouldn't be shocked to see the Chiefs driving like towards the end of the game and there's a turnover, like a pick six, like because they're rushing to get to the line, and like a 38-24 win. I told everyone against the Cowboys, against the Giants, and against the 49ers. I was like, take the plus 6.5. Take it. Buy it. Pay the extra. They were paying out at a plus 154. I think it's going to be one of those games. I think the lack of wide receivers is going to hurt Patrick Mahomes. Listen, Travis Kelce's probably going to have 10 catches for 160 yards, but I just think it's the lack of wide receivers. And, they don't have speed guys. And that was the advantage they had with Tyreek Hill, because he made everybody pedestrian. Like, you had to have 2, sometimes 3 people back there.
Mm-hmm.
Valdez Scantling, he's banged up. Kadarius Toney, he's banged up. Like, not that everyone's healthy. We're in week 21 of the NFL football season. We know everybody's banged up, but it's going to be hard to go over the top on the Eagles. That's just my opinion. I just think, I think the Eagles, if they get to Mahomes to get a couple 3 and outs in the beginning of the game, and where they stuff them on like certain plays, I think it's going to become frustrating, and it's going to force Mahomes to try to be Superman. Try to do it himself, and sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't. But the thing about the Eagles is they, on their big 3rd down and 4th down plays on both sides of the ball, they make big plays.
Mm-hmm.
They make big plays. It's they've done it all season. My only fear, and not even that is a fear, is that Mahomes get knocked out of the game. The Eagles, pull off the upset, even though they're a 1-point favorite. And then for the next 6 months, it's who did the Eagles play?
Yeah, and no one really wants to see Chad Henne in the Super Bowl. I mean,
no. The only time you want to see Chad Henne in the Super Bowl is when he's taking a knee for the other team,
right?
But like, and that's the thing, and like, I must say, I've never seen a bunch of sore losers like I have in the San Francisco 49ers. They are not handling this loss really well.
Interesting. So I would I guess I haven't. Yeah, I have talked to a couple 49ers, and they were frustrated. I would almost say that the Packers fans are a little bit worse, but we'll just
really.
kind of.
Well, I mean, yeah, you deal with them more than I do.
Oh my gosh, and that's the thing. I think when you have a team, and maybe this is what the 49ers. I mean, with their defense, they thought, okay, they're here. They just need a quarterback to make it happen. And is that kind of why they've been sore losers, or just thinking if they had a quarterback, they would have beaten the Eagles?
Yeah, I sit there and like, I get frustrated from it, because I'm like, the Eagles in 2019 were a hot team, and Clowney went so hard that he forgot to play football for a year and a half. Put him in concussion protocol. They said he was really bad. He didn't recognize his wife after the game. Like, they said he was. Yeah, he said he was vomiting up. Like, it was not good. 2003 against Carolina Panthers, Donovan McNabb broke his rib. We had Coy Detmer. And then in 2019, we had Josh McCown on a ripped groin. Injuries are a part of the game.
They are.
Carry a third quarterback. Brandon Ayuk saying that Kansas City is going to expose. What? And then the Deebo Samuel saying, if we would have had a quarterback, we would have won by 10 points. Well, you fumbled. Like, Reed Blankenship caused you to fumble. And if Robbie Gould, if you force him in the pocket, you're going to have a good day in the defense. He's number 1 in pocket passing yards. I don't think so. I just think And then what was the new one? Oh, Jimmy Ward. Oh, I can't wait to go to safety next year because when I see AJ Brown and Devontae Smith, what? You're going to safety because you're getting a little older and you're not as fast as you were. They what? And then Christian McCaffrey. I hope both teams lose. Which okay, I can respect that. I can respect that. But everyone like Robbie Gould, you've been in the league 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to talk about a quarterback. I get it. I get that. He only threw for 125 yards, but he didn't need to do anything because they controlled the front of the line. He had 4 rushing touchdowns against the #1 defense. Jordan Mailata should be in jail for what he did to Bosa. Should be in jail. He bodied him so bad. There's an imprint that says Joey Bosa or whichever Bosa was here. What was here? And that's another thing. It goes back to who the Eagles played. They took the offensive player of the year, Justin Jefferson, held him down their 50 yards. They took the defensive player of the year and held him to no 6. They took the coach of the year and beat him by it, and it was a 63-point differential. I am on record as saying that Brian Dable should have been the head coach of the year. That team was a disaster. That franchise was a disaster.
Absolutely.
He came in, he put some character and everything in it, but for people not to be. For Nick Sirianni to not be in the head coach of the year, it's atrocious. And then people don't like Nick Sirianni because he does this in the camera. What is the difference between that and the defensive player intercepting the ball and then running down to the end zone and posing in the end zone? Well, I don't understand the difference. Just say you don't like the fans, and that's why you hate the Philadelphia Eagles. Just say it. That's all I want to hear. And I'll have a lot more respect for fans if they sit there and say it instead of Nick Sirianni, there's no room for that in the game. They're playing a game for fun. And they get paid. They get paid.
I would say some of these coaches are real. I like Nick Sirianni the other day. He was being a parent in the press conference, telling his kids they were just kind of in. And I think now I like coaches, players that are real, and it's tough because I get it, as a coach and player, you don't necessarily want to be bulletin board material. Obviously don't have bulletin boards as much, but you know what I mean? But if they're real, that's who you want. And I'm sure that's what the players want to see too. Is their coach real? Are they just, for the cameras or whatever? And you have coaches, players that are like that. When you look at the Eagles, I'm a huge Devontae Smith fan and a huge Jalen Hurts fan. And it's weird to say that as a Bears fan. But, I like when these players are real. And obviously you see players that are solid, that they're not, I don't know. They're cocky, but they, for a reason, right? You look at players that are unlikable. And I always come back to this as a Bears fan. I respect what Aaron Rodgers is, as a player that he's won, right? But he's just so unlikable. You know what I mean?
He's such a terrible human being.
Well, yeah. And it's funny to watch, obviously, Packer fans kind of going back and forth, defending him. I'm like, he doesn't care about you. He's going to be gone. No. He's already back channels, been talking with Vegas. He's going to be a Raider. I believe that's going to happen. But when these players are real and you see them continue to grow, I like that. I respect that. I would love to see my Bears win, right? But I was honest, it was not going to happen this year. It may not even happen next year. I'm looking at 2024. I think you'd be honest as a team. You look at the progression, and the Eagles, they're positioning themselves to be in the conversation year in and year out, like the Chiefs are. And so I think that's what you like to see. And for other players to kind of, it's almost like a manufactured beef, with 49ers. They kind of have had that. I don't know, a chip on their shoulder, like they think they should have been here. But really, there's a lot of pieces that John Lynch, they should have put in place to make sure this didn't happen. They traded up for Trey Lance.
Yeah.
And he didn't have any experience. I spent some time in actually North Dakota and actually have worked in Fargo, so I know NDSU football. I've been to a couple games there actually, and he was a talented player, right? But he'd only done it for 1 year, And so you trade a lot of draft capital. I mean, it reminded me of what the Bears did for Mitch Trubisky. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just evaluating talent. I mean, waiting for the right player. And that's, I think, what the Eagles have done, waiting for Jalen Hurts. I mean, you look at him and I'm sure they saw kind of all that leadership and being able to go and be successful at a second major, college and show that growth.
No, and you're right. It's just, there's a lot of teams who, who I think maybe because the likableness of Sirianni is because he's in the Super Bowl and but he's been like that all season. He's been like that all season with his kids, and these people who sit there and say that, like, I don't know if you remember Steph Curry years ago, he used to have his daughter at all his press conferences. And
Yep.
One of the reporters would get mad, like, we're trying to do a job here. He's like, I'm a father. What do you want me to do?
Yep.
Like, dude, like they're showing their human side.
Yep.
Like we want to show these guys the human side. And then when they do, it's like, oh, well, why are you doing that? Now, I'm sure if Sirianni was more on the national media level dealing with them all the time, they might not find it as cute dealing with his daughter Taylor as Philadelphia does, but we don't care. Listen, we want this guy to coach our team, our favorite team, and lead us to victory. That's it. Your daughter could do jumping jacks and do backflips. As long as you're answering the questions that the reporters need and you're winning you're winning football games, no one here in Philadelphia is going to care. No one cares.
I think that's, when you're doing anybody, when you're successful in your job, you don't have, your boss or people, breathing down your neck. I mean, they're going to kind of give you a little bit more slack or, be on your side when you're being successful. And when you look at some of these markets, New York's one of them. I hesitate to put Chicago in there, but Philly's one of them. I mean, it's got to be a tough place to, be the top coach, the top quarterback. You have to have a certain personality to do that. I mean, Kansas City is different, right? I mean, Mahomes is Mahomes, but you have different markets that are a little bit tougher, I'm sure, to be the quarterback in. I mean, you look at the Jets, right? And you look at what happened there. But then even with the Giants, before we go, I wanted to get your thoughts on, do you think that the Giants should or will sign Daniel Jones to like a massive deal? I mean, that just seems like to be a stretch, doesn't it?
I'm gonna go back to, if you're going to put money into Daniel Jones, get him a real receiver.
Right, exactly. And
Daniel Jones, he only threw 15 touchdowns this year versus 5 interceptions. It's great. Those are great numbers. 15-5. That's a great turnover ratio. But you only threw 15 touchdowns in 16 games. That's to me, that's not good enough to win in the NFL. That is what Jalen Hurts did last year. But now we're going into year 5 of Daniel Jones. He needs a legitimate number one. I don't know where you're going to get one, to be honest with you. I don't know where. Like, so if you put your money into him and you put your money into Saquon, you have no money for a wide receiver.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to see them sign him to a massive deal. That means that us will still face Daniel Jones, and they won't have any good wide receivers. Like, I'm sorry, that's just the way the NFL is. It's just the way the NFL is built. Mm-hmm. The Eagles got lucky. Like, they're in the Super Bowl with a quarterback on a rookie year deal.
Mm-hmm.
Like, a lot of good things is, a lot of money comes off the payroll for the Eagles next year, like Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham. There's a lot. Like, the Eagles got a lot of moves to make next year. Doesn't necessarily mean they'll be bad, but they got a lot of moves that they got to make next year to be. But yes, I would love to see Daniel Jones get a massive contract. And, the last time the Giants beat the Eagles at home, I had 2 kids. I have 3 now. It was like 2012 or something.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, we've lost to them their place, but it's been a long time. And the Giants, if I'm their GM, the biggest signing I'm going after is Boston Scott. I don't know if you've ever seen that guy. He's played 8 games against the Giants. He's got 10 career touchdowns.
Wow.
Yeah. They hate him. They say they hate Boston Scott. Like it's like they're like I'm tired of this.
Wow. Yeah.
It's quite comical because we always have the joke here in Philly, like Eagles are playing Giants. All right, take a Boston Scott anytime touchdown score. And Vegas doesn't really pay attention, and it's a plus 380. You're like, it's Boston Scott, and then he punt returns against them. He's probably got over like 1,200 yards like combined against them in 8 games. Yeah, it's comical. It's just, and then he's just a regular third string running back against everyone else in the NFL.
Yeah.
With the Eagles, it's 10 touchdowns, or against the Giants, it's 10 touchdowns in like 8 games. It's I love it. It's comical.
Well, this has been a lot of fun. I definitely appreciate you coming on. So where can everyone find you again?
So we are on we're on Twitter. We generally try to go live on Tuesday nights on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube on Six Pack Coverage. And then we'll be doing our last show of the season until the draft, hopefully celebrating a Philadelphia Eagles Super Bowl win.
So win or lose, you're going to do it?
Oh yeah, we're gonna do it. It's either going to be Taps or the Eagles fight song. But listen, I had a lot of fun. It's nice talking with other podcasters who are different fans and seeing like their what they see that maybe we don't see. I like I said before, I think Chase Claypool was a steal for the Bears last year. It just sucked. I feel like he got hurt. And then,
he did.
And then he just didn't really play, and there was no rapport. But that gives him all season, all off season with Justin Fields. And I'll say this: you got to hope that maybe Justin Fields has the work ethic of Jalen Hurts, because that guy has the work. Like Jalen Hurts' work ethic has never been put in question.
Yep.
It was just he couldn't read a defense last year, and he made me look like a fool. And I am okay with being made look a fool because my team's in Super Bowl. I have no problem with it.
Yeah, and I see a lot of that in Justin Fields as well. I mean, listen, the quarterback position is the most important position in football. The Bears have not gotten it right for a long, long time. And so, yes, there's a little bit of hope. Obviously, there's some things to do. But I think as a fan, you look at teams like the Eagles and you look at kind of that blueprint. I think, like we talked about earlier, it's a copycat league. I think, especially with Ian Cunningham coming from the Eagles, they may take some of those things. Their assistant general manager, some of those things. But when you have the right people in the front office starting to make right moves, I think the Bears do with Ryan Poles and Cunningham and all of that. And now they're going to be getting their stadium with Kevin Warren. So there's a lot there. I think that's important. You want sustained success. You look at teams like the Chiefs in the Super Bowl who sustain this success, and the Eagles, they've won a Super Bowl. They tore or they've retooled, and now they're back, and so those are the teams that you look at. And I mean, there's definitely hope, I think, for my Bears, kind of looking at Super Bowl Sunday.
Yeah, there is hope for the Bears because you got Claypool, you got Komet, who was a really good tight end coming out of college, and hopefully he can take that next leap. And like you said, Justin Fields, like I said, it all starts. Well, everyone says it starts with the quarterback. It really starts with the line. If they get to your quarterback, you got the best quarter. Like look at Peyton Manning in the Super Bowl against Seattle. You can have the greatest offense in the world, but if you have 2 seconds to throw the ball, it's and you can't get separation. It's going to be a long day.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, you talk about Komet and so like I went to the Dolphins game, the first Claypool game, and they started doing some different things with him. They were handing the ball off to him, and there were just some different things in the offense. And I think that's what you need to do too. And when you start to get talented players, then you can do some different things. And that's what they started to do when Claypool was there. And hopefully, I think they're with the new offseason, they'll put more of that together for him, and hopefully another wide receiver. I'm heading to the draft, so in Kansas City, so I'm excited to see that what they do. But When you look at it, there's a lot of different pieces that teams have to. It's not just one player. Obviously, quarterback is important, but yeah,
Yeah.
I mean that line and the Bears are terrible on the offensive line.
Yeah, and I always sit there, and I'm a big Allen Robinson guy, and when he left, I just feel like the Bears never really. They were like, it's only Allen Robinson. We have what we have, and they didn't. And you can't do that in the NFL. Like you
Well,
need a number one wide receiver.
it was addition by subtraction though. He had checked out, and so like it
Yeah,
was kind of agreed. They do need that number one wide receiver, but it was time. It was just kind of like he wasn't going to be part of their winning future, and so
yeah,
you saw he got injured or didn't do a lot
yeah,
this year either. But yeah, you do need that number one guy that's going to be the go to in crunch time.
yeah. No, you're right. But I see you are going to the draft.
I am. Yep. I got my hotel already reserved for KC, taking my kids. We'll see. I'm wearing all my Bear stuff. We'll see if I can get close to the front row or not. So,
Well, I went to the one here, and it's get there early.
get there early. Okay.
Get there early. Do you have tickets for it?
They haven't released the tickets yet. So,
okay, yeah. So we got picked, and we got picked for the second round. So
okay.
yeah, so I was there when they drafted. Who was that corner from Washington State? I can't think of his name. He hit towards ACL, but we were going to draft. I swore the Eagles were going to draft Dalvin Cook, but the Vikings traded up and took him right before us. I think they were still mad about the Sam Bradford trade the year before.
Oh yeah.
So, but yeah, so we were there. It was quite an experience. Like I met Roger. Like he was walking through. I got pictures with him, but it's a cool experience. We were there we were there for the second, third, and fourth round. And like I said, we were hanging out with the other fan bases, like the Dallas fan bases. It's a pretty cool experience. It really is.
So you said that you got picked for. So like, how does that work? You kind of line up, and then you get maybe picked to be up close, or how does that work?
Oh no, you did. Well, first you gotta put in for the tickets, and then once you get the tickets, you get down there, and then you just wait in line. And then if they're at capacity, till someone walks out, they won't let nobody in.
Oh, really?
But it might be different because it depends. Where's it at in Kansas City? Is that
the Union Station?
So it might be a little bit. Ours was at the Art Museum.
Okay, so, this might be. I'm guessing this might be outside, so they might try to.
Yeah, ours was outside too.
Oh, it was. Okay,
yeah, it was outside. Yeah. So, but it's like I said, like me and my one friend, we went, and it was it's good for the kids. They have all the stuff in the NFL experience. It's cool. But yeah, definitely. Are you from Chicago?
I'm actually living in Wisconsin.
Oh, okay. Oh, you're a Bears fan living in Wisconsin.
Yeah, it's been interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're gonna be on vacation. You'll be out there already. So yeah, just get down there early enough. Like I said, there's stuff for the kids to do. But yeah, I think try to get in line early and get your seats. You really can't move up front unless there's openings, and then they'll move you up front. Like we were up front, I think for like the fourth round pick, where we saw John Dorenbos come out and make the pick. Like I could like throw a rock at him if I was that close.
Very cool.
Not a battery, as Philadelphia.
Yeah.
So what are your predictions for the game?
I was thinking it's more going to be like a 35-28 Eagles.
Yeah.
Something like, yeah. I do think, Mahomes is going to score. He's going to get his points, whether it's early or late. They're going to make a late push or something.
Yeah.
But I just think the Eagles are going to either be too far ahead or, have enough, just to really kind of grind out the, game at the end.
Yeah. If the Eagles can hold the Chiefs to 20 points, I think it's a win. I think the Eagles will win the game.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, all right.
Well, thanks again, Chris. I definitely appreciate you once again. This has been NFL Outdated Coverage Series on the Super Bowl, and Fly Eagles Fly.
Yep. Go Birds. Fly Eagles Fly.
Thanks again.
Thank you.